Before the time of home consoles, everyone who wanted to play games went to an arcade. It was a social experiment in a large and vast open sea on which a lot of developers sailed their flagships. We went back to that arcade each week to meet up with our friends, show off our high scores and see what those developers had in store for us. Today I take a look at 5 of those arcade flagships. I can't please everyone, but I feel the need to say, these are my opinions, this is my perspective and my own top 5. That being said, I want you guys to come with me on the ride through history and to the arcades.
Hello computer, hello computer, hello computer, hello computer.
I love space shooters and my first entry is a first of its kind. Space Invaders released in 1978 and was manufactured by Taito and licensed by Midway in North America and Europe. Being the first fixed shooter, Space Invaders had a massive appeal when it came out. Inspired by a time where science fiction was as big as ever, Space Invaders had you fighting an alien invasion while taking cover behind, well, things. The goal is to eliminate all the rows of aliens. If the invaders reach the bottom of the screen, it's game over. The classic game is a lot of fun in its simplicity and it created a whole genre. It's referenced in pop culture over and over again. In one of my Thunder short videos I even stumbled upon some Space Invaders shoes. The game has some cool official spin-offs. I have a bundle called Space Invaders Forever, which contains Space Invaders Extreme and Space Invaders vs. Arkanoid. The latter is a vertical game to be played on the Switch in handheld mode. If I can find a nice Switch stand for this mode, I see myself playing a lot more of these. This bundle has some cool musical elements to it. The main menu has a musical note assigned to each input, so the menu is actually compelling you to jam it out. Space Invaders Extreme continues the musical tradition as every shot generates a musical note too. It makes you want to play to the rhythm of the game and it creates a lot of immersion for such a simple game. Space Invaders and its spin-offs are plain and simple fun for everyone, with cultural relevance that can be seen and felt even today. SNK and its Neo Geo brand at one point were the absolute kings of 2D gaming. I remember seeing Metal Slug in an arcade on holiday back in 2000 and even though we were already in the polygon era, I was so impressed by the animations displayed. Metal Slug was a game responsible for a reignited love for sprites and arcade multiplayer gameplay. The game is a run and gun that lets you pick between 4 different characters to run through levels, gunning down various different enemies within a certain theme. Interesting to note is that up until a recent release, Metal Slug has never really changed its look. It felt like a winning team and continues to do so. For this reason alone I give my 4th spot to the entire franchise and not just the first game. But for this video I played Metal Slug 5. But how do you play these games at home? The Neo Geo home consoles and games are so expensive that we look at 2 alternatives. The Anthology collection on the Wii, just as the digital downloads of the loose games on the Microsoft Store and Nintendo eShop, and of course the Neo Geo Mini. The Neo Geo Mini is a device that I've been wanting to get for a long time. It's an arcade collection in a mini console that outputs to HDMI just like the NES Classic. If you want a Neo Geo experience at home, this and the Pro Stick may be the best solution. Hadouken! Who hasn't played Street Fighter 2 at one time in their lives? Even though there were earlier arcade fighters such as the original Street Fighter, no game did for the genre what Street Fighter 2 did. It was the first fighting game to be played in versus mode. That usually meant someone else sitting on the opposite side with his or her own monitor. Especially in Japan, where these games were played on the Astro City cabinets. What I wouldn't give to experience the game that way. Arcade 1UP recently released the Big Blue Street Fighter 2 cabinets, which has online play, believe it or not. How freaking cool is that? It does require someone else though on the other side with the same cabinet, and they are expensive, but it's an amazing development. Street Fighter 2 brought some fierce competitiveness to the arcades. Rivalries were born due to the game and people spent hours training. Yes, actually training to beat each other in rematches. I can listen to people on YouTube for days on end about those rivalries and the atmosphere Street Fighter 2 brought to the arcade.
Girl, I know you know how to move. You're dropping it down like you got something to prove. Your freaky hips and the big fat thighs. I wanna get a taste of what you got inside. I said, hey little girl, you rip off your shirt. You leave on your heels while I lift up your skirt. Don't ask me for my...
I've played Street Fighter 2 mostly on home consoles and I've used various controllers, but I think I have found the one I want to use from now on.
Well, the thing with Street Fighter 2 controls is you have 2 attacks but 3 stages of each attack. The layout is very different from the Sega Genesis controller because it doesn't use any shoulder buttons. But if you'd ask me, it plays very well and even better than the Super Nintendo controller or the Red Wing 5 controller.
I use the A for short kicks and the Z for if I have a longer distance from my opponent. You can just use the one hurricane kick if you want, but this is just part of my own strategy.
I said, hey little mama, let me give you a ride. I need another reason to feel that inside. Don't ask me for my name, it's not a part of the plan. Now all you gotta know is I'm a dangerous man. So hey little girl, you rip up your shirt. You leave on your heels while I lift up your skirt. Don't ask me for my name, it's not a part of the plan. All you gotta know is I'm a dangerous man. Fuck me up good. Fuck me up good.
Down towards right and pressing the C button, like this movement, will create a Hadouken.
This entry is a combined one. Namco is responsible for 2 of the biggest arcade games of all time, and obviously PacMan made the list. It's a game that's easy to play but difficult to master. Back in the day it transformed the arcades into a social meeting place instead of just a place to play games. Why? Because PacMan was specifically aimed at a female demographic. The idea was to get both sexes to play more games together, and it totally worked. The thing is, men found Pac-Man just as cute and the game was a completely new concept. We all had to play it. The game has had so many ports, re-releases, spin-offs that it makes your head spin too. I have a Pac-Man collection on the Game Boy Advance that offers different variants of the same game, mostly making it harder by obscuring the view in isometric mode or making it a bit more colorful to perhaps attract newer generations.
It's been living hard at times, and changes on the horizon. Do you need something new in your life to see you through? Another tear, another smile, another year. You know you shouldn't worry, you know we'll be fine, but you can't help yourself thinking where you're going all the while. Don't you crash and burn. I know we made a pact that we would never grow up, still youthful in our 60s and our 70s would rock.
best version you can play is just the classic arcade game, but I do want to mention PacMan 99 on Nintendo Switch, which is a very cool alternative. I play the original game all the time on my counter cave. It's in fact a game I pick up almost daily, just like the game it came with, which I'm arguably a lot better at. Yeah, Galaka is my jam. Galaka has had its 40th anniversary a month or so ago, and here's to at least 40 more. What an amazing game to test your reflexes, hand-eye coordination and well, your mashing skills. Galaka is the successor to Galaxian and it improves upon the original by having the opportunity to get double ships and fire more rapidly.
That man is playing Galaga. Thought we wouldn't notice, but we did.
It's saying a lot that in all these years there hasn't been a massive need to improve upon the formula. It's one of the best what you see is what you get games out there, and it can really get your heartbeat racing if you know that you're on a game that's going to beat the high score. Galaka is one of the most iconic arcade games to have stood the test of time, and I can't wait to get back to an actual arcade to try and go for the high score. Welcome to the Fantasy Zone. Get ready! My number one spot goes to a developer that's had so many success with various titles that it may have been hard for me to pick just one, if I did not already completely love this one. Space Harrier is the embodiment of the fantasy, sci-fi, video game blockbuster heroes aspect of the 80s, which we all miss and even romanticize a bit.
1, 2, 3, 4.
It's so over the top that it becomes tasteful. It always makes me think of Masters of the Universe, Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon or even Alice in Wonderland. What really got me the first time I played the game was the music. It's a beautiful piece that has 80s production but some typical late 70s composition structure. When I hear the theme, I get so excited to play the game or even to pick up an old sci-fi novel or classic 80s movie. The game is not for everyone. It's dodging and shooting and being surprised about things you can bump into and things you can or cannot shoot. But like I say with the music of this game, it's the whole vibe that sells this for me. You really enter a fantasy zone when playing. Speaking of which, ever heard of that awesome space shooter Fantasy Zone for the SEGA Master System? Well, it takes place in the same universe as Space Harrier. I absolutely love stuff like that. Crossovers creating expanding game lore and dots to connect. Space Harrier is an experience, a monument to a certain time in pop culture, a reminder that fantasy doesn't need barriers or restrictions, and a statement of a company who went on to capture the hearts and minds of countless people in the years to come.